My last day at Shooter Symposium, I got to hop into an advanced SPR class with Alex Hartman of Ridgeline Defense and Jared Reston of Reston Group. Now, this class I was particularly looking forward to after shooting with Bruiser earlier this year and picking his brain on long range and scoped carbine and precision shooting and getting my feet wet in that and all the information that Bruiser's given me. It really got me like very passionate about it, but also just kind of geeking and nerding out about it. So I wanted to learn more. So I was very excited about this class. Now, there is a ton of information from this class. I can't show you guys all of it, and I didn't even get to stay for the whole day, but I will show you as much as I can, and there is so much information, I'm going to break it up into parts. So this is going to be part one, which is just Alex breaking down the SPR setup, some considerations, and then also how and why he sets his up the way he does. So because it is so long, I'm going to let you guys dive into it, and I'll see you on the other side.
There's a few things I want to focus on specifically. Okay, what an SPR is, what an SPR isn't or doesn't need to be, and then everything else from there. So SPRs, a lot of guys confuse that, meaning it has to have an 18 to 20 inch barrel. It does not, okay? What I'd like to see is an accurized or matched barrel if possible, a good trigger, and absolutely must have a free floated rail. The difference between what I would consider like your average LPVO equipped gun, right, and really like a dedicated precision setup. One is going to be the attachment of a bipod, right, to support the front of the gun for positions, the prone position, and also positions other than prone, using it as a way to kind of dial in on cover, concealment, what I like to call environmental artificial support, so things you find out in the world. You guys have been here in the last couple of days. You've heard me say this before. Every gunfight I've ever been in, I looked right, I looked left. I could not find a VTAC barricade, so I had to figure out how to shoot off something else besides that. So we're going to make sure that our guns are set up to work real world. Moving from that, the big thing I want you guys to see on your setups here is bipod positioning. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we can access the bipod and its adjustments, all right, while you're prone behind the rifle. So you don't have to completely break a position. You can just reach up with your non-firing hand, all right, and make those adjustments, whether it's in cant, whether it's locking down your ability to cant, or whether it's actually changing the elevation of that. Bipod selection, all right, is going to be kind of important, and I see a few of you guys in the Magpul bipod, so we're going to go ahead and cover that first. All right, so with bipod selection, height, all right, right now the average is kind of the 6 to 9, kind of Harris BRMS is kind of the standard. Okay, the BRMS we like because it has those notches in the legs. So if you guys have ever used those friction lock Harrises or knockoff Harrises, they tend to fail and fall at exactly the wrong moment. All right, so we want to make sure that we have those notches there. The ability to swivel is going to allow you to take off cant. You guys that were here yesterday saw how that cant affected that student pretty good. We'll cover that more when we get out to distance. The other part here with bipod is usually beyond just being able to reach it from the prone, people push it all the way forward because that is going to be the best or most advantageous mechanically as far as, I'm sorry, bro, you guys want to slide around so you can see it? I can see it. Advantageous mechanically, all right, as we push the fulcrum as far forward as possible. So if we support the gun all the way out here and we support the gun all the way back here, we've supported the most of the gun, right? As we cheat that back, it'll take less movement in the rear to have more movement in the front. All right, so one of the reasons we do that, like I said, one is be able to adjust it from the rear. Two is we want to make sure we're going to play a little bit of a 50-50 game here. I want to have the space up here, all right, to be able to get a support basically to ride the 6 o'clock here. One of the reasons I like the Badger version of the Harris so much is all that linkage. I'm trying to see if there's another one right there. Can you grab that rifle right there? Turn it. It's a Badger one. That's all right. Makes sense. Probably Badger. I don't see anyone over there. All right, so a traditional Harris, they have like the linkage that actually attaches and screws down. All right, so what that does is puts a very narrow space for you to actually set the gun down on top of. And so you get a lot of wobble doing that. What I kind of like to say is if you can reach it from behind the gun, and if you can reach up and put your hand kind of C-clamp behind the bipod when it's up on a barricade or support, that's the right distance. If it's further forward on the rail, that'll start to twist my shoulders and blade me out. You guys will see that when we get into alternate position shooting later this afternoon. All right, some quick Game Genie cheat codes on going fast here, right? So one of the things that I'll do with these bipods, all right, the reality is for most SPRs, depending on your magazine selection, is that I'm actually going to want these legs all the way out for most scenarios when I actually go down to get behind the gun. Here, up on an elevated position, looking down, not so much. You're probably going to want to be pretty low, right, until we get a little bit further out. But real world, if I was just down flat ground and I wanted to go prone, I usually want to be longer in this like 9 to 13 range. Right? I'm desperately begging Badger to make me that. One of the things that I will do to increase my speed here is I take a little bit of 550 cord. I'll tie it off just above here, and then once it's nice and tight, okay, I'll just girth hitch another piece here. So when it's time to drop down and deploy, I just reach up, give it a quick pop, my bipod comes out, and I'm ready to go. Again, it's about saving time on deployment, okay? So that's about it on bipods. Moving on. Additional support items, sling. You should have a 2-point sling. That's about mandatory. All right, and additionally, where those sling is mounted is going to be pretty critical. We want to mount it as far forward to what I call the inboard side. So as a right-handed shooter rather, you'll be at the 9 o'clock with the front sling mount. As a left-hander, you'd be at the 3 o'clock. You're going to reverse that when you get to the back of the gun. All right, we want to be with the sling on the outboard side as a right-handed shooter, which would be the 3 o'clock, and reverse that be the 9 o'clock for a lefty. What this is going to do is when we go to actually use the sling as a tensioning device in positions other than prone, all right, we're going to have the most control over the front of the gun because we've put it as far forward as we can. I like to say that in like, anybody here do jiu-jitsu, combative defense? I know you do jiu-jitsu, right? So when you want to try to control somebody, especially their hands, because hands hurt us, where do we grab them? Yeah, we don't grab the shoulder, right? All right, because if we were to grab the shoulder, how much control would we have over the front? None. We still move a lot. We want to grab that tension all the way forward, and this acts as that limiting strap up there. All right, sliding on back, we're going to get into optics package real quick. So, or as I was, let's start with the barrels because it's kind of the heart of the system. So like I said, I'd like to see an Accurage or match grade barrel, but there are plenty good like cold hammer forged barrels that shoot super good. So I'm not really concerned there. What we're looking for is a doctrinal level of accuracy. Your weapon, optic, ammo, and then shooter combination needs to be able to maintain sub 2 MOA to be within your doctrinal standard. A 2 MOA capability at 600 yards means you're going to be able to keep it on a 12-inch wide plate if you do your job with wind, okay? What your means at 300 yards is you can still get a headshot, right, as long as you do your job with wind. All right, once we start to add layers to that, like shooting from positions other than prone, where wobble becomes apparent, all right, we want to continue. The more accurate you are, that more fudge factor you're going to have. So if your system's a 1-minute gun, that buys you back more fudge factor in your wobble or your wind call out at distance. Cool. All right, I don't really care about gas system. It is what it is. Suppressors are nice. 1 for recoil, 2 for signature management. Okay, really, signature is what I'm after on the combative side. The recoil impulse from a suppressed gun is just super nice to be able to come right back on target. If you guys do pursue SPRing seriously, one of the things you'll see me and Jared talk about is actually practicing with your short range marksmanship with this, all right, so that it's not just your default belly gun. What you'll find is that your presentations might be a little bit different, all right, just in terms of feel, because you put so much weight at the front of the gun with the can, the bipod, and a longer barrel than maybe your SPR. All right. The next part of that we're going to get into is the optic system, which is really the heart of the gun. Okay. So when I get back here to optics, all right, this is what unlocks this potential. If I took the same gun, threw an 8-point on it, do you think I'd take the same shots at 600 yards? Fuck no. I mean, probably I could get a hit, but it's going to be more of a swaggy guess in terms of hold, and it is going to be a precision dialing of my trajectory and my departure angle on that shot being fired. When we talk about optics, all right, we want to talk about a range of optics. So magnification range is incredibly important to SPR, okay? A lot of people will consider like, hey, I've got a 1-6, I've got a scope carbine, that's my DMR gun. False, all right? We came up being taught kind of in the post, 80s, post-Vietnam sniper era, where kind of like set the tone all the way up until we got a good way through GWAT, was that we wanted 1 by magnification for every 100 yards that we were going to look to engage, right? So with our M40s or M24s, we were 1,000-yard rifles, we had 10 power scopes, usually fixed. What we found, though, is that real world, all right, when you get off of golf course ranges with high contrast, high exposure targets, and you start looking at low contrast, low exposure targets, or varying light conditions in and out of veg, you want a little bit more to be able to see and actually positively identify that target, okay? What we're looking for that is somewhere between 2x roughly per 100 yards would be my baseline. I like to say that your maximum magnification, I know that's kind of a fucking weird thing to say right that, but like 1 to 8 should be like your bare minimum for a DMR skip. And technically, I'd like to see a little bit higher in today's day and age. By a little bit higher, I'd like to see those medium powers, right? 3 to 12s, 3 to 15s, 3 to 18s, 3.6 to 18s, whatever, 4 to 16s, that side of the deal. 3 to 20s if they're small enough, okay? What I don't want to see, and I fortunately don't see any out here, is like, man, I want to see really good. So here's my 20-inch AR with a 7 to 35 on it, right? That's the wrong answer, okay? We want to still maintain the handiness of this rifle so we can fight with it, we can move quickly with it. When it comes down to mounting this thing, all right, one of the things that I'd like to see is that you maintain your standard sort of 154 low mount, okay? The reason is this: you're still going to probably be a little bit low on your face. So if I was to put you asleep on the gun, you're probably still going to be about a 1/4 inch low. All right, but the 17s, 19s, 204s, 458, whatever the fuck, all right, they just keep getting higher and higher. One, it's going to start to have a ballistic effect. You're going to have to push your zero pretty far out, and it's going to start to change your data. There are some weird combos with like really fast short guns and 50-yard zeros that allow for a really nice max point blank range. But again, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. Some of the go fast cheap math I'm going to show you today is really going to be based around a 100-yard zero. All right, so from there, if you don't have that, you start to set yourself back from being able to stack things onto the far end of the scope. All right, the reason we want to fight so hard for that is because we want to maintain that good cheek weld with height of comb while we're prosecuting this shot. When it comes to the in the optic, reticle selection is going to be pretty important. This one has a Tremor 3 simply because it does. Right? I threw it on there because it is what it is. Do I recommend a Tremor 3 for the doctrinal employment distance of this? Hell no. Okay, realistically, most of these guns are going to be between 5 and 6 mils to get to 600 yards. And at 600, yes, these guns can go further. I'm just calling it the line in the sand because that's doctrinal distance for DM programs. All right. I like to look at if you're going to be first focal plane or second focal plane. Does everybody know what I'm talking about when I say that? All right, cool. So with first focal plane scope, all right, we're front focal. We're putting that reticle in front of the magnification erector. So as we change magnification, the reticle change sizes in relationship with the picture that it's superimposed on, which means that those gradations of measurements stay the same at every power angle or every power range. With a second focal plane, it's behind it. And so what happens is while the picture changes size as you dial up or down magnification, that reticle stays the same, which means those gradations are not the same. What did we see yesterday? Right, dude, with the one guy with the second focal plane, when we got to distance, we were making wind calls. All of a sudden, I'm like, bro, what are you holding? And then I looked down, and I was like, wait a minute, you're not at max power. All right, so again, I had to catch him on that. Now, without fail, that happens a lot. Are there LE guys in the room? A couple? All right, so usually LE is still pretty fond of second focal, and second focal does do a couple things well. Like I said, depending on reticle type and size. So like we got a 4-16 here with a Tremor 3. At 4 power, I can't see the damn reticle. All right. Whereas if I had a second focal plane, I'd be able to see that reticle and make those up close fast shots if required. Okay. It also works really well under night vision because a lot of our CMBDs are not set yet with resolution to be able to see above 10, 12 to 15 power depending on the type. Okay. So there's things to consider there. All right. External parallax adjustment is nice to have, especially if you push the distance, and it's nice to have, especially as you go up in magnification. Your lower magnification scopes typically will have a fixed parallax somewhere between 115, 135, maybe 150 yards or meters, depending on your manufacturer. All that means is, again, that setup for height is going to be super critical because if you've got fixed parallax, you don't have the ability to take that parallax out of the optic prior to the shot. Now, what parallax is? Can you grab that cardboard right behind you, sir? That'll do it. All right. So what parallax effect is going to have for us, okay? So for guys that did this on Friday and yesterday, I apologize. All right. All of you, if you can, take your finger, put it out like this, place it right on my chest or chest-ish. All right. Shift your head left or right. You see it appear to move across my body. All right. Now, if I put my finger on my body, move your head left or right. See how it doesn't move? All right. Game Genie cheat code here. All we're talking about is like there's between 4 and as many as like 16 plus pieces of glass inside of here, right? And on every one of those glasses is a projected image of what it's seeing downrange. Your reticle, if it's not lined up, if those start to get a little cattywampus, all of a sudden you go from holding your perfect mechanical accuracy in one spot where you fire 5 rounds and you stack the mechanical accuracy of what I like to call the accuracy equation, weapon, optic, ammo, and shooter, okay? If you start to have some parallax, and you're like, you fire one shot you thought was good here, 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 and here, simply because you are placing what you think is the center of the reticle on the target, but in 5 different locations. You've now shot, okay, that maximum performance of the gun here, and you can open up that group size very quickly. One trick as we get here into gun setup with optics is if you do have a fixed power LPVO, if you bias it just slightly forward of perfect, meaning like when we set that perfect eye relief, when you're at maximum magnification and you can just kind of see everything perfectly with a completely natural state with your head, you're not leaning into the gun or pushing away from it. If you just bias it like a notch or even less than a notch by sliding it in the rings forward, where you've extended your eye relief, you will start to see scope shadow a little bit around the outside. The trick here is that if we can keep that scope shadow concentric in a circle, we know that we're shooting with that reticle in the center of the tube. We've taken parallax out, okay? So there's a little trick there for fixed parallax scopes. All right, working around here, again, not to insult anybody's intelligence. We did have an issue yesterday. So we like to call this PEW, parallax, elevation, and wind, okay, in that order. And as we get into the fundamentals of marksmanship today, you're going to hear me say a little ditty. You guys are probably sick of me hearing it already. All right, PEW, okay? The P stands for position. All right, this is my pre-fight checklist. Position, which includes, is that my position fundamentally sound, and is my natural point of aim perfect and on target? The second P is, do I check my parallax if I can, or check to ensure that it's in the center of the tube? 2, I set my elevation, my firing solution for whatever I need to hit downrange based on distance or based on our res. All right, and then lastly, I make my wind call, and at that point, I send it. All right, if you push wind any further up in your shot process, by the time you get to the end of the shot process, it's probably fucking changed. All right, so it is position, natural point of aim, parallax, elevation, wind, fire. And it should be no more than 1 to 3 seconds once you figured out a wind call before you send that shot, or the winds will start to change. All right, so again, elevation, start off the Marine Corps, is what makes it go up and down. All right, it's on the up side. On the side, all right, it goes left to right, it makes it go sideways. All right, that's wind. All right, there we go. When we set this up for to fit the guns to you, okay, for the most part, I don't see anything too fucked up, like I said. But the ocular lens, all right, this is the objective lens, faces the objective. This is the ocular lens, faces the ocular cavity. The ocular lens from 99.9% of people is going to be in line with charging handle, okay, or maybe slightly biased forward or rear, depending on your exact setup, body type, etc. Before we get to that, we're going to set our length of pull. Length of pull is going to be determined by the buttstock. You will find maybe when we get off our face, you're going to come in 1 notch on your buttstock if possible, all right, to get you back into your perfect eye relief. When we do set this up, your order of operations for gun setup is going to be this. 1, set your length of pull. All right, to do this, simply 90-90 rule. All you're going to do is put the buttstock in the crook of your elbow, let the gun fall forward, and so it's naturally resting with your trigger on the trigger, or trigger finger on the trigger shoe. What I'm looking for here is this first crease of my finger to be riding the outside side of that shoe. If you guys feel real quick, thumb pressing to the center of your trigger finger, you'll feel all that meat and mush. If you slide it just over right inside that crease, you'll be straight to bone-on-bone contact. Pushing in that far is going to give a perfect 90-degree trigger control, and it's going to allow us to have a really good grip for follow-up shots. All right, once we've set the length of pull, the next thing we're going to do is set that eye relief like I talked about. What did I do with my, there we go. Jared, if you would.
Yes.
All right, so eye relief is going to be set of where the exit pupil, right, or this cone of light comes out. As you'll see,
Guys, come look at his hand.
if you see, right, I'm at minimum magnification right now, which is how a lot of people will set their shit up. All right, as you move forward, you're going to see there's going to be a crossover point, all right, where it gets smaller and it gets bigger. It's going to be roughly 3.5 inches, all right, behind your scope for most scopes. Now, here's the problem. This is at minimum magnification. When we do this, we want to be at parallax set to infinity, which is a little sideways figure 8, and we want to be at maximum magnification, because what that does is that sets our true eye box at minimum. So you see the size of that now versus the size of that now. So this is pretty forgiving. We could think we're set up and then we power up. It changes our actual eye relief and it makes our eye box, I'm sure you guys have heard that term, a lot tighter. So gun setup, again, length of pull, eye relief, and then if possible, if you have it, you'd adjust your height of comb. Thanks, Jared. All right, your height of comb is going to be how you set the top of your buttstock up so that when you bring your cheek down to have cheek to stock or stock weld connection, your cheekbone sits perfectly on that as you're completely relaxed. This aids that consistency of being in that exit pupil, which means it's going to limit the effect that parallax has with you while you're shooting. Now, I like to leave a little bit of slop in my height of comb on an SPR. Why? Because it's a fighting gun. The positions I get into might be a little bit bastardized and not perfect, okay? Also, I might be wearing a helmet or something else that's got a chin strap on, which would push me out if I had dead-ass exactly perfect height of comb. All right, so that's just something to think about there. Once that's set, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that the ocular focus is set for you. So the ocular focus or focus diopter is usually located at the back of your scope. All right, some of them will have a locking collar, some of them will be free spinning. What we're doing with that is setting the prescription of the optic, if you will, okay? I won't keep this at maximum magnification, parallax to infinity, and what I like to do is take a white board, like the back side of an IPSC backer, and turn it 45 degrees, so I'm reflecting as much light back through the tube as possible. I keep the illuminator off, and I make sure that I have the highest contrast backdrop. So black reticle, white backdrop, no illumination to blur anything out. And at that point, I will start to adjust that focus diopter until that reticle is perfectly crisp and clear. Then I'm going to close my eyes and open them, and I should immediately see crisp and clear reticle. I like to look for one of the numbers because it's a little bit easier to read than just seeing a crosshair, because for us, a lot of us will just be like, crosshairs, crosshair, good enough, right? Looking for a number, allowing me to read that looks good. If it takes like a 1/1000 before it clears up, that's because your eye's starting to constrict, all right, to make that prescription happen. What we want to do is take that away so you don't get as fatigued or tired when looking through the glass. Once we've set that, there's a few things we want to do. Who here is running night forces? All right, so night force, I'm a mongoloid. I break that thing off that locking collar all the time, right? So once I have it set, I turn the locking collar down. I'll either take a piece of electrical tape and run it around it so that it keeps the locking collar tight down to it. So as I reach up to grab and manipulate it, it's cool. The Night Force ATACR specifically, their home brand throw lever actually locks that locking collar in, so it kind of prevents that for me. That's one thing for that. For guys that are running like Loophole Mark 5s, the Vortexes, or anything else that doesn't have a locking collar on that focus ring, you want to put a witness mark from the top of the tube and onto that adjustment. So in the inevitability, all right, that you actually rub that thing on kit or equipment while moving, all right, when you get there, you can quickly line that back up and make sure that you're good to go. So again, this is all prep work you do prior to. All right, once we're good with that, you're basically ready to go. That's when it's time to go out and zero. Once we get through zeroing, guys, I'll have you slip turrets. What that means is basically undoing these set screws that are conveniently ground colored, so please don't back them out beyond the edge of your tube or turret. All right, once we've slipped those turrets so that they read 0-0, now we've dialed in and zeroed the gun. For some guns that have zero stops, etc. internally, what I typically like to do is set them with about, like, I like to have a locking turret, again, for that inevitability of rubbing on my kit. If you don't, and you simply have a turret that locks at 0 or a 0 stop inside, I usually set it like maybe 0.3 to half a mil low for ammo fluctuation, so I'm not always just stuck. All right, we do change ammo, we do change lots. It is what it is, so I want to be able to do that quickly. All right, couple habits here. I'm going to go ahead and throw this, guys. Actually, no, I'm going to save you that. Don't say shit. Don't say shit. Don't say shit. All right. Beyond that, let's talk about offset red dot sighting systems. So offset red dot sighting systems are something that the internet says you should have, and they are nice to have. Are they a must-have? Maybe. Okay. There's a couple times where, you know, they do have a pretty good benefit, and it depends on setup, right? So for me, I'm running this one off the rail here. It's a 35-degree mount. It's kind of a bastard child. So 35-degree with a high rise, right? Which is what the manufacturer says not to do. What it does for me is it limits how much it's hanging off the side of the gun as a snag hazard. All right, but it also pushes it high enough up that I don't have to bury my face on the buttstock to maintain it and get a good sight picture through there. So that's just me. If you run it 12 o'clock off the tube, that's fine. It's going to work great for bilateral shooting. It is something you're going to have to go practice, though. I cannot tell you how many times. In fact, it has been every class ever when we've done a short range marksmanship portion with these that people that have offset red dots will immediately present to their magnified optic instead of their offset red dot because they haven't built in the habit of going straight to that. Okay. 45 off the tube is awesome if you're running nods for passive, and if you're running what we call natural body cant. It's a term dubbed by Mid-South back in the day of how you lock the buttstock into your shoulder pocket. It works really awesome. However, it now adds a height over bore and like a windage over bore issue. So you've got a pretty big thing to make back up. All right. If you don't have it, and guys will tell you, oh, I'll have it at 12 o'clock. I can put it on my target and then I can slide right into my optic. No big deal. Line your turret up with the target, drop in your optic, and you'll be there to find it, no problem. All right. So that covers that. When we zero these, I also zero this at 100 yards, personal preference, all right, because I like 100-yard red dot zero, but then I confirm them out to 300 yards. So I want to be able to hit point and click on a BC plate or a 66% IPSC, all right, out to 300. Why? That allows me to meet doctrinal U.S. Army infantryman rifleman standards, okay? 0 to 300 is my area of responsibility. I need to be able to hit that with any sighting system on this gun. Cool? So if you're unable to do so, it's a no-go there. All right, triggers, 2-stage, single stage, I really don't care. That's on you. Getting back here to buttstocks, we're going to spend a little bit of time on the importance of those. So when you select the buttstock, there's a couple of things. I'm looking around. I don't see anybody. Anybody have an LMT stop? Yep, right there. All right, so here's the cool part. If you are going to shoot off a rear bag, using a rear bag as rear support, it likes to sit pretty much exactly where the latch is on that LMT buttstock, and it depresses that latch. So under recoil, well, pow, and you're a pirate, okay? So what we try to do is find buttstocks, if possible, that have some sort of either lock or protection of that release if we are going to utilize a rear bag for additional rear support during our shooting from the prone position. The other thing that I'll do, I like, this is an older setup. I've used the LaRue, whatever it's called. I think it's called like a MUB, or I don't know. Use it for a monopod. I don't use a monopod. Don't use a monopod. All right. But what I use it for is a nice thumb hook with my my rear bag as we execute, which you guys will see here in a second, what we call the 2/3 grip on the rear bag. 2 fingers to the gun, 3 fingers to the bag, 2/3 of the bag to the outboard side. This is going to help the gun maintain its straight into the rear follow through during recoil management. Allows us to come back on target much faster. What it also does, you'll sometimes see these called a bag rider. It actually increases that surface area, so it's not punching a point of the buttstock down to the bag. Now, this might sound like semantics, but just to give you an idea, we're talking about precision shooting here. All right, back here, you're approximately in every 15 thousandths of an inch of movement in the muzzle is going to be an inch of target out there at 300 feet. For your pistol shooters, I'm sure you've done a demo with your red dot pistols or your iron sight pistols, where you've either moved the sight blade just over the width, left, right, up, and down, or the red dot left, right, up, or down on top of the window and printed that group on the target. Usually at 5 feet, 1/8 of an inch there, is an inch of movement on the target. So you can imagine how much we're talking about when we get back to these distances. With the rear bag, when I talk about that, both the bag rider and as that technique of 2/3 and how we're going to talk about setting our natural point of aim low to compress the bag, that media inside of there is going to want to displace. The Cordura that most of these bags are made out of have some stretch. So under recoil, that'll start to stretch. It'll find that void or those empty spaces for that media to compress, and all of a sudden, your reticle will end up high on follow through. So we want to work that really well. All right, there's another one now, just came out called the Arasaka one. All right, I see some of you guys have like larger rubber butt pads on there. The little cheat code for this I got from Ken Good, used to be from the Surefire Institute way back in the day. When he taught combat shotgun with those limb savers, what he would do is take electrical tape and wrap just the outside and roll the corner. So on presentations, usually shotguns are presented with the stock down on the hip and press up, similar to a high ready or strike ready presentation with an AR. What will happen is that limb saver will tend to hook up on kit, clothing, etc. The electrical tape makes it slide right out nice, so you can quickly shoulder and mount the gun. All right, so that's all we're going to talk about with butt stocks there. All right, any questions on rifle setup, whether it's equipment and or actually setting or fitting the rifle to you? All right, good to go. Last thing I want to talk about, some magazine selection. So 30 rounders are going to make your life difficult if you don't have a tall enough magazine, and depending on what the ground looks like. 20 rounders are cool. Now I have a +5 on here. People think I'm only giving up 5 rounds. Answer, yes, it is nice that I'm only giving up 5 rounds. Real answer, if you go into any legitimate magazine pouch, if I didn't have that on there, it'd be a little bit harder to grab. So having that extra meat on there allows it to reach down and grab and bring it out a little bit faster and nicer. All right, so I can get it into the gun quickly because I am at reduced capacity. All right. The other part of kit here and the individual equipment side. All right, so on my line 1 kit, if you guys break it down like that, line 1 kind of belt around your body, line 2 is your chest breaker, plate carrier, line 3 would be kind of in your rucksack. So when we do get to my bag here at some point, I'll show you that my bag is staged or tiered. So the stuff that I need immediately to fight with is top and most accessible. All right, and then the things that are like nice to haves, like raincoats, fucking tubular nylon, etc., that sort of stuff is placed a little bit further inside the pack. But on my line 1 kit, I will keep a laser rangefinder. Okay, this allows me to get extremely accurate range to target quickly. All right, what we're looking for here with this is me knowing what we can do. So if we shoot this as sniper light, as a precision rifle, how accurate of a shot we can get. That's what you can do. Later today, we're going to focus on what we can get away with. But especially as we push the distances beyond 400 yards, or you have targets of limited exposure or unknown target size, having the ability to lurf quickly and get a good range to target is going to increase your hit probability by over 90%. Okay, it's just math. If you go out and do the WES analysis, if you look at anything that Brian Litz puts out from Applied Ballistics, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. He's got great graphs on it. So keeping that on your body. What you guys have in class the last couple of days have heard me say, and what you guys will hear me say today, is that I teach a lot from personal failure. Okay, so why do I have a lurf on my first line kit? I'll let you figure that one out on your own. All right. So questions, comments, concerns on that?
There you have it. There's Alex's breakdown of the SPR and why he sets it up the way he does. Stay tuned as we get into the actual shooting portion and him talking about some of the fundamentals of precision shooting. And during the class, we get down to shooting 0.5, 0.3-ish splits out to 600 yards. So stay tuned for that. Again, thank you to Big Tex Ordnance for making this content happen. Make sure to like and subscribe. Karate chop that bell to get notified every time I upload a video. And I will see you guys in the next one. Let's do another take. I didn't like that. Okay.